Okay, so in this video we're talking about quiz 2.4.3, which is using congruence postulates. Now grabbing another colored marker. Okay, congruence postulates state that if you can get a combination, the correct combination of sides and angles, then you can prove through that your triangles are congruent. For example, if you can show all three sides are congruent, then your triangles are congruent. If you can show that two sides and the angle that sits in between those two sides are congruent, then your triangle is congruent. Similarly, if you can get two angles and a side at the end of those two angles, so angle R, angle T, and then this side that sits right after your second angle, or a side and two angles, then your triangles are congruent. And if you can get two angles with the side in between the two angles, then your triangles are congruent. So we are going to go through a few examples looking for if we can find congruence with them. So in this first example, we are given that side MN, that side, is congruent to side PQ. So those two sides are congruent. Okay, side NO is congruent to side QR. So far we have two sides. So it could be SSS or SAS. And here we have our third statement. We are given MO is congruent to PR. So that gives us all three sides. So these two triangles, or triangle M and O, is congruent to triangle PQR by side, side, side. Okay. All right, so let's look at example 2. We are given that side RS is congruent to side UV. We're told that angle S is congruent to angle V. We are also given in our diagram that we have that these are right triangles. We have right angles. So given that, we have an angle, side, angle. So by angle, side, angle, that tells us that triangle RST is congruent to triangle UVW. Okay, and then in our third example, rotate this a little. Okay, so our third example, we are given that angle U is congruent to angle X, angle V is congruent to angle Y, and angle W is congruent to angle Z. Okay, so we have three angles. Okay, three angles are nice, but they are not enough to determine congruence. Notice we need at least one side given to us to say that our triangles are congruent. So we do not know if these two are congruent or not. We do know that they are similar because all three angles measuring the same, all three angles being congruent can tell us that our two triangles are similar, but they are not necessarily congruent. Okay, let's say another bad, so this is an example of something that does not determine congruence. Another thing that does not necessarily determine congruence would be given two triangles. I'm going to switch markers. So we've been given two triangles, and we were given an angle in each, and then two sides. Okay, so that's an angle and two sides. You'll remember this one. Okay, that does not guarantee congruence. So if you have an angle and then immediately two sides, we don't know if they're congruent. Okay, so AAA and then ASS, or if you move to the other way, it would be SSA. Those are not necessarily congruent triangles. Okay, let's look at an example that says, what's needed to show congruence by angles, side angles? So I'm going to erase these and draw up a new picture. So if you're given two triangles, we have triangle A, B, C, and we've been given two angles in that to match up with our triangle over here, which is going to be X, Y, Z. Okay, so here are two triangles that we've been given. We're asked to determine what do we need. Okay, what is needed to determine congruence by angle, side angle? Well, we have the angles. We just need the side that sits in between them. So we need those two sides. So we need to be able to show that side AC is congruent to side XZ. Okay, if we get that, then we can determine congruence. Okay, and one last little tidbit. You cannot build two triangles with equal side lengths but are not congruent. In other words, two triangles that have the same side lengths are congruent. So if all three sides are equal sides or congruent, then the two triangles are congruent.